And then you guys can beat them head up. I mean, then you win the division.
Stop with all that, you guys.
You purple people eater, you. Yes, you're a Vikings fan. Wear it as a badge of honor. Your defense is a little scary. You see it on your sidelines. That was a huge blow to your team. Halfway through the third quarter, he fumbles the ball. Yeah, I don't trust your corners. I don't think you're totally out the division race. If there's a weakness to your team, it is the depth of your defensive front seven. And for you guys, Mike, I mean, you know, the one thing, and I'm saying you guys as in Vikings, okay?
That was all from the same day. That was all from the same segment.
Conversation.
That was all from the same show at some point during the 2019 football season. My goodness.
Sounds like that was like after the Bears game, you know, early in the year where we're like, what the hell is going on? What's up with the Vikings? What's up with Kirk Cousins? You're always a little Dr. Doomish. It's always a little gloomy when it comes to you talking the Vikings. I can't wait for this right now.
Well, no, look, I've got the Vikings at number 13 in the PFT preseason power rankings, ahead of the defending NFC North champion Green Bay Packers by one spot. The Packers went to the NFC Championship game where they were trounced by the 49ers. The Vikings took their whipping from the 49ers a week earlier. But look, as of right now, and Chris, this is something we talked about when Mike Zimmer was getting his contract extension. I feel like the Packers consciously took a step back in the hopes of eventually taking multiple steps forward.
Yeah.
I feel like the Vikings have just decided to tread water because I feel like at a certain level, the Vikings are content to contend. But there's no indication to think that they're going to show up and they're going to be this dominant presence that goes wire to wire, one seed, finishes the job, returns at the Super Bowl for the first time in 44 years. Haven't been back. They were there 4 times between number 4 and number 11. And they haven't been back since then. And I just feel like they're in that perpetual fringe of good enough but not great enough.
Yeah.
So 13 is fitting, right? Maybe they win the division. But do you really see this team? And we'll get into the nooks and crannies. Do you really see this team contending with the best teams that the conference is going to have to offer in 2020? Because I don't.
No, I don't either. You know, Mike, I've been liking your rankings here. When I saw Vikings at 13, it was one of the teams that jumped out to me to where I went, oh, I don't know about 13. That might be a little high for them this year. You know, what are the, you know, you explained it well. It's not like a rebuild, but it's kind of like a retooling on the fly here. Been a lot of turnover on this roster this last year. And yeah, it's not, maybe it, ends up being a good thing a year or two down the road, but I'm not so sure I sit here and believe that it's going to be a good thing here in 2020. That, like you said, I don't think they've improved their football team. Again, defensive line, let's just start there. The defense is, you got a pretty damn good defense. I can't see it being as good as last year. I don't. Everson Griffen not there. Linval Joseph's not there. You signed Michael Pierce from Baltimore in free agency. He opted out because of COVID-19.
Yep.
Right. So Xavier Rhodes gone. Trey Wayne's gone. You're going to have some new pieces at corner. I know you got the linebackers and safeties. They're special. But then the offense, again, there's questions there too. Yeah, Stephon Diggs, second biggest playmaker on that team last year other than Dalvin Cook. The offensive line, yeah, it's better. It's still a work in progress. So, I would sit here really and I would go, most divisions in football, I'd go, man, the Vikings got no chance of winning that division. The NFC North, though, is a different story. I don't know if there is that team there. So, yeah, can they stay competitive there and do all that? Yes, but I don't think they're going to be as good as what we've seen the last few years there in Minnesota. I don't see this as being a playoff team in my eyes.
Let me start with the defense.
Yeah.
And look, they were hoping to get Everson Griffen back. Everson Griffen had an opt-out clause in his contract, which was smart because the Vikings would have eventually squeezed him to take less and maybe cut him after the money wasn't there. Now, the problem is because of the pandemic, he wasn't able to go out and get a big deal early in free agency, but he was able to go wherever he wanted to go. He chose Dallas for a one-year deal worth up to $6 million. The Vikings clearly weren't in that conversation, or they would have had a shot to bring him back because that's where he's been for his entire 10-year career before now. He's a big loss, I think, from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah.
And, he's good at getting around the quarterback, and he's good at opening things up for everyone else. Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes, dollar for dollar, I don't view that as a significant loss because Mike Zimmer is very good at coaching up young defensive backs. They'll have guys who can come out and get it done. They're going to need guys who can come out and get it done.
Yeah,
they also lost Mackenzie Alexander to free agency.
Young guys, yeah.
Yeah, but the bigger issue with the defense, I think, is the scheme. It's almost like the concerns you have with the Seattle defense.
Sure.
Like, it's a scheme, and the code can be cracked. And I know of coaches who very easily can crack that code. They know guys are always in the same spot. They always do the same things. They always react the same way. So you can fool them or take advantage of the holes that are there, because ultimately you only have – that's the thing. There's always 11 pieces on the defense.
Yep.
And if you're going to go one way, then something's going to be open. And that's why when we talk about the Seattle defense, and Rodney Harrison said last week, it's better to have the ability to confuse pre-snap so you don't know where those 11 guys are going to be. The Viking scheme's gotten a little predictable, and that's one of the reasons Mike Zimmer brought in Dom Capers this year.
Yes.
Who's a 3-4 guy. Maybe we're going to see some mixed elements here where there's more guessing that needs to be done. Now, good luck getting all that installed.
Yeah, right. It's tough.
A season without an offseason program. But I think the defense, Chris, needs that refresh. Not a rebuild, not a reload, just a refresh. And Zimmer's good enough to come up with some new concepts, but I think he's at a point in his career where he realizes his defense has taken him as far as it's going to take him, and it's never going to take him into the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
without some goosing of the scheme to make it a little more unpredictable and make it a little bit harder to scheme against.
Agreed, Mike. There's no doubt. I mean, there's some similarities to that Seattle scheme and Mike Zimmer scheme. And listen, Mike Zimmer, he's one of the best defensive coaches of our time. I mean, he really is, and I don't want to discredit him that way. But you're right. There is some predictability with the scheme and how they're going to play. And I standing ovation, really, for bringing a guy like Dom Capers. Honestly, I think Mike Zimmer realized it a little last year where obviously he did. I mean, he self-scouted thyself. He's a smart guy, and I saw him do a few different things towards the end of the year and even in the playoff game where they beat the Saints where I went, ooh, Zimmer doesn't usually quite play like this or this coverage in this type of situation, to where it made me think wait, he's probably a little bit like, man, Sean Payton's got a hold of my stuff and I got to be more multiple. So it's not going to take a lot. It won't. Just a few little wrinkles here and there from a guy like Dom Capers certainly can give them more of a schematical advantage. But, I guess, the big thing is, I just don't know. I don't see anything on the Vikings right now to where I go, this really excites me. Yeah, I know Gary Kubiak's the OC, and he knows how to run the football. But the passing game is less than, in my eyes. It's very simple. It's very predictable that way. So if you're not dominating the run game, I don't know if the rest of the offense always works, which scares me. And you talked about that a lot last year. Kirk Cousins was a different guy because when they ran the ball, the play actions, the bootlegs certainly became open. And then when it became a game where they couldn't run the ball and they have to drop back pass, I don't think their offense is extensive enough to capitalize on stuff like that. So, they're one of these weird teams that, I look at and go, I think they'll be competitive. They'll be a pain in the butt for a lot of teams in football. But as you say, I don't think they're any threat of going deep into the playoffs or going to a Super Bowl. I think they're a borderline playoff contender this year. That's about where I see it.
Chris, the Vikings are the equivalent of that high school team, and it seems like there are high school teams like this throughout the country who are run only. They have this running scheme, and we're going to run the ball, and it's going to serve them well because they do it all the time. It's perfected.
Yeah.
And then when they come up against that one opponent, that one really good opponent that shuts it down, they can't do anything else.
Oh.
Even though the Vikings have that passing game, the passing game flows through the running game, and if the running game's not there, the passing game isn't there, because that's when Kirk Cousins does his 3, 5, 7-step drop, and it all falls apart, and he can't improvise. It's that thing that separates the best of the best quarterbacks from the guys who are just pretty good. The ability to make something happen, to whip up on the fly a batch of chicken salad when the reality is he collapses like the proverbial Jenga tower when that line can't hold off the lineman at a time when, The run isn't there, so you can pin the ears back and you can go after Kirk Cousins, and it's easier because you know he's not going to squirt away from you and do something while he's running laterally that results in a 30-yard gain, and he's not going to take off down the field and gain 20 yards. And it just makes it – and that's his limitation.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. He's a great passer, but physically he's limited. And I don't see them doing anything to address that. And I'm sorry. I feel like they're content to potentially be 10-6, 11-5, 9-7, get to the playoffs, hope for some sort of a weird alignment of the planets that allows them to punch through to the next level, and hope that luck can continue. I just feel like when they come up against a truly dominant team, the luck's going to run out, like it did last year.
Yeah, agree. Well, there's more unproven commodities on the team this year. They got to rely on corners that haven't played, like you talked about a little bit. They got to rely on Justin Jefferson, who's a rookie wide receiver, and they play a lot of 2-back, 1 tight end, 2 receiver sets. They're going to have to rely on him. And Mike, I think you bring up a really valid point. 2 things that you said that really hit me. Like, yeah, you're right. They want to run the ball and do that. To me, a little bit like the Mike Zimmer conversation. Hey, if you want to run the ball, you got to be able to throw the kitchen sink at people when you do run the ball. Because if you think you're just going to have your 4 or 5 schemes and go, oh, we're just going to run, we do these well, we block them up well, hey, yeah, you might be able to feast on the weak. But to your point, when it becomes the really good defenses, those 4 or 5 schemes are just not going to be enough. You need to be, more moving parts, more multiple in the run game if you're going to be a run-based team. A la, Gary Kubiak with, the Shanahans. Look at Kyle Shanahan. Look at all the moving parts you see in their running game. I mean, they got guys going every which way, every which direction, let alone those 4 or 5 schemes we talk about that Gary Kubiak has. He has that. But, Shanahan has 30 wrinkles off of that are still effective run plays that kind of look like those 4 or 5 run schemes. To me, that's where they got to open up the kitchen sink. And then, Mike, the biggest thing that you said to me, too, we talked about the Packers yesterday, and we said it was an underwhelming 13-3 season, right? When I sat there on my computer last night and looked back at the Vikings last year, there's a lot to respect. I certainly don't want to take that away from them. But I do think they had a schedule that kind of fell right for them, too. 10-6, yes. And, I don't know. You tell me a marquee win you guys had during the regular season on the schedule last year. Who was the marquee
Cowboys
win?
Sunday night.
Right. The
non-playoff
night. Cowboys. That was your marquee win.
Yeah.
To me, that kind of shows you, like, yeah, your team's on the precipice of, but not, like, big time.
Stop.
What?
Stop.
Your team?
Stop with that.
Sorry.
Stop.
I don't even realize
I'm
I say it anymore.
About to turn my hand around and curl down 3 of the fingers, and you know which 3 are going to be curled down if that happens, and it will be. We won't make it to Peacock after all. Adam Thielen over the weekend was interviewed by SiriusXM NFL Radio, and he was asked by Bruce Murray what the Vikings need to do to get to the next level. And what Thielen said is they need to quit talking about getting to the next level. And no, I don't think that's it. I think they need to get to the point where the current level is no longer acceptable. They need to talk about how this isn't successful to get bounced in the divisional round. And I thought it was very telling. As Thielen gave his answer, he said, we did enough to make the playoffs and get to the second round, which is great. That's a successful season. No, it's not. If you look, I understand that only one team is going to be successful if the definition is winning the Super Bowl. But the thing is, the team that ultimately wins the Super Bowl typically is the team that has the overwhelming obsession to win the Super Bowl. And there usually are more teams than one that have that overwhelming obsession. But to me, I feel like it's a necessary ingredient.
It is.
And if you even allow yourself to think that it's successful to get bounced in the divisional round, you're missing that thing that is going to drive you to the Super Bowl. You need to be tormented that you didn't get there in order to have a chance at getting there. Does that make any sense at all?
No, it does make sense. And honestly, I think that's kind of what he's trying to say. He tried to gift wrap last year and say it was a successful season. Yeah, we understand. It was a good year. But, I think what he's trying to say, too, is, let's stop all this talk. Like, just shut up. Let's go to work and we need to be edgier and better and more consistent and whatever it is, I think Thielen has a pretty good feel for the game and what's expected. And I don't know, but I don't see it with your Vikings. I think you're high at 13 with them this year, like high figuratively and literally.
Calling last season successful is the equivalent of hanging a banner for being the AFC finalists, like the Colts did several years ago. It's not a banner-raising moment. There's only one, and only one team gets to do it every year, and everyone who falls short needs to be tormented by that, even though they know ultimately only one team can do it.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.